So I just finished watching the first 2 episodes of X-Men 97, and I have some thoughts. Mostly positive, actually. I really enjoyed this show. It's like the perfect continuation of the X-Men 90s animated series, which is exactly what it aims to be, so it did its job, but it also does some cool new things that I really want to talk about. But before we get into any of that, I want to be like Gambit and put all my cards on the table and say I am a massive X-Men fan. I actually have the videotapes of the first 3 episodes of the original 90s show, Pizza Hut exclusives. Do you remember Pizza Hut? I do have Pride of the X-Men video coming next week. I also own every single episode of the 90s show on DVD, and I feel like I actually learned a lot from the 90s show. Not just about comics, but about bigotry and tolerance and prejudice. And of course it led me to the comics. I have the original Stan Lee, Jack Kirby run right here, which is one of many. And yes, I also have the film adaptations, but let's not get into that right now. And of course, my favorite character is Gambit. I have a few cosplay images that I'll put up on the screen here. Actually, since minute 1 of its availability, my profile picture on Disney Plus has been Gambit for 4 years now? And since this was the series that got me into comic books and the X-Men in general, I was cautiously optimistic for X-Men 97 since it was announced, 2 years ago? Again, cautiously optimistic. Marvel's track record recently has been a little spotty, and I feel like I was the only one that wasn't completely blown away by the trailer. I mean, I thought it looked pretty good, but I don't know, I had some doubts. And then there was a lot of stupid online buzz over their decision to turn Morph into a non-binary character, and I can guarantee you 99% of the people who were complaining about it were being completely disingenuous, because, come on, who the fuck cares about Morph? But that also had me a little bit worried, because they took a character that literally everybody hated from the original show because of how annoying they were.
My fellow Americans, I am an idiot.
If it makes you feel any better, Gambit.
I go in like this, huh?
Hey, whenever I got into trouble at school, I used to turn myself into the principal.
And if you're gonna make that character non-binary and you fuck it up, you could give a lot of stupid people ammo for that. Luckily, it looks like they've stuck the landing, at least in the 2 episodes that I've seen. They haven't gotten too far into it. They really haven't even mentioned it at all outside of the recreation of the ending credits. But so far, I'm enjoying Morph's recharacterization. It feels true to the original show while updating it for modern audiences. And then one last thing before I get into it, the series showrunner Bo DeMeo has been let go or fired from Marvel for some unexplained reason. At the time of recording, we still don't know what's going on, but it may be over an OnlyFans account, but it may have just been they parted ways. Again, we don't know at the time of me recording this. If you guys are looking for an episode breakdown or like Easter eggs of what you may have missed, that's not what this is going to be. This is just going to be my initial thoughts of what I saw maybe an hour ago. So right when I booted up Disney Plus, it was right there waiting for me. And I saw that it was Dolby Atmos compatible, and I have a Dolby Atmos system, so I thought that it took full advantage of the new format. And this might be a controversial opinion right off the bat, but I found the intro a little lacking. The animation is obviously better than it was in the 90s, but again, that was like 30 years ago at this point. Fuck, I'm old. But the way they recreated it just felt a little bit off to me. The music, while great, and it's still the X-Men theme from the 90s, didn't have the same punch as the original Ron Wasserman version. And while I was watching the intro and I had these little nitpicks, I was like, oh no, is this gonna suck? I'm fully aware that I could be very cynical, and in this case I was overly cynical, because everything that followed was pretty great. Actually, while we're still in the opening, I thought it was really cool that they gave Morph and Bishop their own opening titles. I also found it a little odd that they rearranged some of the characters in the opening title sequence. This might mean nothing to anybody, but in the original Power Rangers movie from 1995, they mixed up the morphing sequence, and as a little kid, I'm like, oh, that's not how it's supposed to go. That little kid was complaining while I was watching this, because I was like, no, it's Cyclops then Wolverine, not Cyclops then Jean Grey. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I think it's because this show has a lot more focus on Scott and Jean, and that's something that I really, really liked about this show, and it's something that, while rewatching the original show, that I really appreciated. I like that Cyclops in the original show would question the professor in private, but as the series went on, he would more openly question the professor in front of the team. You could tell that he believes in Xavier's dream, and he believes in leading the X-Men. There's still something about him that doesn't quite understand every little decision that the professor professor makes. And I think Scott in the original show and in this show is a way more well-rounded character than the version that's in the sex pervert movies, because in those movies Scott is there as an obstacle for Logan to overcome, because they want Logan and Jean together, even though that's fucking disgusting. But now I'm talking about these. I'm gonna get back to talking about X-Men 97 and the original animated series. The original Cyclops voice actor, Norm Spencer, passed away a number of years ago, so there's a new voice actor, I'll put his name on the screen here, has to take over that role and has to have that same intensity yet Boy Scout charm as the original. And I think he blew it out of the park. I honestly, when I was watching it, unlike some of the other characters that were recast, I felt like he was the one that was like, no, that is Cyclops. I believed it from line one. In case you haven't noticed, I really do like Scott Summers, and I think he's been treated really unfairly since the 90s show, again being an obstacle for Wolverine to overcome. I guess on that subject, again, we're only 2 episodes in, so I don't know what they're gonna do for the rest of the season and the planned season 2, but what I liked was that the show is not Wolverine centric. Everything post X-Men 1 seems to be very Wolverine centric. Wolverine is the main character. Wolverine is the X-Men. There's actually a show called Wolverine and the X-Men where he leads the team, which is a great show, don't get me wrong, but I want Cyclops and or Professor X to lead the X-Men, and in this show he does lead the X-Men, and Wolverine is a side character, as he should be, and I don't mind if there's Wolverine-centric episodes. I don't want the show to be Wolverine-centric. I want the show to be X-Men-centric with a little bit more of a lean towards, you know, Scott, or if you're going to do what the original series did, kind of give everybody their chance to shine, except my favorite character, Gambit. His shining episode was really bad, but again, beside the point. I've rewatched the original 90s show multiple times, but since seeing the trailer for X-Men 97 a couple of weeks ago, I would watch a few episodes before I went to bed over the last month or so. I actually finished 2 days ago, and I felt very prepared for this. I didn't know if it was going to be a direct continuation or a spiritual successor. I'm kind of glad that I watched the entire show before I watched this, because it is a direct continuation. They talk about things that happened in the final episode of the original show, which was Graduation Day. Everything is a follow-up to that, plus there's little references to the Morlocks and, you know, some of the team dynamics that are directly from the original show. I feel like you probably could watch X-Men 97 without watching the original show, but it would be a lot like watching Mad Max Fury Road, not watching any of the other Mad Max movies, where you can jump into it and you can enjoy it, but it's a lot more rewarding if you've seen Mad Max Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I also want to be a little bit more clear about something that I was saying earlier about the voice acting. The voice acting is great. It is superb. There's a few characters that are voiced by the same actors from the original show, and some of them, they do sound older. I'm able to get past that. Storm sounds exactly the same. I was really surprised how not changed her voice was. It was great.
Rise, fog, and divert our enemy from her path. Storm, your master commands.
Ancient sands, heed my command and reclaim these relics of hatred.
Wolverine does sound a little bit older, and Beast definitely sounds older.
It would be quite disconcerting if this were to detonate.
An astute observation, my boy. Hank McCoy here.
Rogue sounds like she's voiced by a different voice actress, but it is the same voice actress.
You know, I remember when I was 13, had me a boyfriend, till I kissed him.
We've rodeoed more Sentinels than I care to count. And Storm and Bishop are made of sterner stuff than you think.
Gambit is voiced by the guy who played Marty in the Telltale Back to the Future game. I like Marty McFly's version of Gambit, at least so far. He hasn't said a whole lot, but I'm going to get more into Gambit a little bit later, because there's a criticism that I have that is towards Gambit, but it's not about Gambit, so I'll get into that later. Why is Gambit making me feel things? Also, when I watched the initial trailer for this, I thought the animation looked a little bit weird and didn't feel like the original 90s show, but after, again, rewatching it in preparation for this, and also just it's a comfort show. I like to rewatch it. The animation changes like 3 times in that show, so having a different yet similar style that the show is going for, it didn't bother me so much jumping from Graduation Day, which was part of season 5, which has some of the worst animation, jumping to this, which is admittedly very, very pretty animation. It's really good. It's fluid. It feels 90s enough, but it has enough modern sensibility when it comes to animation that you're not distracted. I don't know how else to say it. It's really good, and it's really pretty, and it's really detailed. I just like the animation. The animation is really good, and I really just want to hammer that home, that the animation is not distracting, and the action is really well animated too. Like, I'm not really one for action unless I really care about the characters and what they're going through. Like, the action needs to be part of the story, and the action shouldn't stop the story. And I feel like this show does a really good job of that, especially in the second episode with Magneto. Like, I was on the edge of my seat for that. And that actually brings me to another point, is that because this is a continuation of that show, and that show does tackle topics of bigotry and prejudice, this show does it too, but because it's on a streaming service and it has a little bit of a higher mature rating, it's able to get away with a lot more. Wolverine swears a few times. They're mild swears, but like, it doesn't feel like this show is necessarily for children. Like, the 90s show is for children, make no mistake, but like, everybody can enjoy it. It's a great show. This one feels like it's a continuation for the people who watched it in the 90s. So those people are going to be, older and okay with a little bit more action, blood, and, swearing. Because of the more mature tone and mature rating, they're able to be a lot more concise about what they're trying to say. The show is very political. It's the X-Men. It should be political. I am getting sick and tired of people talking about, why is the X-Men woke now? Oh no, they made the X-Men woke. The X-Men have always been woke. They've been woke since Stan Lee created them. They've definitely became more woke as time goes on, specifically Chris Claremont and David Cockrum and Len Wein. Like, their version of the X-Men is a stand-in for prejudice and LGBT rights and civil rights. The show has always been political and about social issues. There's somebody online who was saying, it's supposed to be about them fighting giant robots. Who built the giant robots? Okay, reeling it back in. I like that they added Bishop to the team. Bishop was one of my favorite characters in the 90s show. I feel like he got shortchanged in Days of Future Past, the movie version, because how I was introduced to Days of Future Past was during season 1 of the original show. So I always tied Bishop into that, even though in the comics that role is given to Kitty Pryde. And here's a fun fact. Bishop in this show is actually voiced by my college buddy Isaac, so great job, man. They don't explain why he's here. They do explain that he's time displaced, which in the original show, he's always jumping back and forth between the 90s and whatever time he's from. I think it's like the 2050s. I thought that they were going to go with he's a younger Bishop, but no, he is the same Bishop. He just for some reason has joined the X-Men back in 1997. It's a little odd, and I hope they explain it later on down the line. It didn't really bother me, but I don't know, it's just something to keep in mind. Also, speaking on the animation changes, in the original show's ending, that was during the time where the animation was done by a completely different team. The character who's supposed to deliver like the death blow to Professor X is Henry Peter Gyrick, who looks a specific way during most of the series, but in the final episode, he's unrecognizable. And the only way that you would know it's Gyrick is if you hear them say, oh, it's Gyrick in this show, because they're honoring, the roots of where it comes from. He looks like season 1 Gyrick, and I really appreciated that. I also feel like everybody's nostalgia for the original show. While the show is great, do not get me wrong, the 90s X-Men show is rivaled really only by Batman the Animated Series when it comes to comic book cartoons. A lot of people's nostalgia really harkens back to the first season and the Phoenix sagas. I feel like there are great episodes, like Beauty and the Beast comes to mind, but a lot of people really only think about those specific arcs, and I'm hoping the show doesn't just stick to the Phoenix sagas or stuff that they introduced in the first season of the original show. And, the show is jumping off from Graduation Day, which is the final episode. I'm just hoping that they expand and, do more new things. It feels like they're doing more new things, and I'm going to continue praising it for that. The show has another 8 or so episodes left. It has plenty of time to fuck it up, but I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. I really hope they don't fuck it up. I'm going to be jumping around between episodes because I watched them back to back, so if I'm talking about something from episode 2 and then I come back to episode 1, you know, that's just what this is. This is all off the top of my noggin. Also, speaking of voice acting, the Sentinels sound awesome. It's not the original guy, it's Eric Bauza, who does like a lot of the Looney Tunes, but he nailed it. I feel like the Sentinels have to have a very specific voice for me. It either has to be what they sounded like in the early episodes of the animated series.
Not be alarmed. I am here to serve and protect. Stand aside. I must apprehend that mutant.
Or how they sound in the Marvel vs. Capcom games.
Rocket punch, mission completed.
And I feel like Eric Bauza does like a happy medium between the two. I don't know. I have a soft spot for the Sentinels, again, because of the 90s TV show, and I had like that toy where like his arm pops off and his foot pops off. Like, I love the Sentinels, and you have to do them justice. They were in it only for a little bit, but it made sense, like, why they were there. I just liked how they sounded. I don't know what else to say. Continuing on from Graduation Day, in that episode, Magneto is gonna start like an uprising with the mutants, like he always does, but this time it's because on live TV, Gyrick tries to kill Professor X and very nearly does so. They don't really go into it in this show. Professor X goes to outer space with his space girlfriend Lilandra of the Shi'ar Empire, because if he's in space, then they can have medicine to cure him, and it's really last minute and weird, but regardless, the X-Men go to Magneto because his magnetic powers can amplify Professor X's brainwaves to call his space girlfriend. So Magneto puts aside his mutant uprising to help his best friend Professor X, and you know, in that episode it was cute. It's the final episode, we get it. And in this show, they have to continue on from that. You know, they wrote themselves into that corner by saying they are continuing on from Graduation Day, so Magneto has to be at least somewhat of a good guy, and I feel like he is, at least so far. I honestly hope they do something a little bit different and keep him as a good guy. He has to do the whole Trial of Magneto thing, which is cool. You get the imagery of the Trial of Magneto. And he goes in front of Congress, he goes in front of the UN, and he's trying to get a pardon so he can lead the X-Men, because that's Professor X's last wish. And while he's on trial, the Friends of Humanity, which is like the anti-mutant group, they storm the Capitol, which I'm assuming is a reference to when those hillbillies stormed the Capitol after they stole the election. Regardless, they show up and they have these weapons. They have these augmented weapons that use like sentinel blasts, and they have like the collars from Genosha that inhibit mutant abilities, and they've somehow turned that into a gun. And a character called the Executioner with an X, not EX, but X, because of the X-Men, get it? They do that a lot, even if the characters aren't X-Men characters, or at least they're not on the X-Men team. It's really weird. They shoot Storm, and Storm loses her powers. And I couldn't believe that they did that, because Storm is probably the most powerful character on the team, if we're not counting Magneto, but she could even rival Magneto. Like, Storm is awesome, and they depowered her. And I was like, oh shit, like, things might be getting serious, because Beast says it appears to be permanent, which, I mean, it's a superhero thing. She's probably going to get her powers back eventually, but to make it Storm, I don't know how I feel about that right now. It's interesting to take the most powerful character and strip her from her powers. It's an interesting choice. I'm not excited to see what Twitter or X thinks about it, but I'm going to withhold judgment until I watch more of the series, because maybe they're going to do something interesting with that. I hope that they do. Magneto is trying to make a case before the Friends of Humanity show up and storm the Capitol that it was Xavier's last wish. Magneto lead the team and put aside his feelings and try to see the world from Xavier's perspective, which was that humans and mutants can coexist together. And when they shoot Storm, he has like this really powerful moment where he takes them up into the atmosphere so they could see the world that they have to share. I was on the edge of my seat because it was scary. I didn't know because the show has already shown that like they're doing a lot more things maturely as compared to the original show. Again, it's a children's show and this is a more grown-up version of it. I thought he was gonna lift them up and then slam them down, but I feel like they pardoned Magneto a little bit too quickly. I feel like they should have maybe done that later in the show. It happens at the end of episode 2. It felt a little bit too quick, especially with all the shit that Magneto did in the original show. I'm not just gonna forget about it because you're making references to the original show, but whatever. I'm kind of excited and I hope they keep Magneto a hero. Like, don't backtrack on that. They were actually on that trajectory in the original show up until the last episode where like, we're gonna do an uprising because what they did to Xavier. It was a little bit out of character in that show. I feel like it's more in character for Magneto to stay on the side of good and lead the X-Men. And that's like the central conflict here, because Cyclops and Jean want to leave the team to raise a family, but they're unsure if they should do that because Magneto is all of a sudden here to lead the team, and then Storm losing her powers, like Jean wants to stay behind and help Beast and Storm restore Storm's powers even though Storm leaves. I hope it's not long. Like Morph even says it's not going to be for too long, which leads into like the big twist ending, which I'll get to in a second. So there's a lot of interpersonal dynamics and I feel like they're doing a really good job about it. I'm excited to see where the show goes. Okay, the ending. Morph, like I said, says that they think that Storm will be back at any moment, knocking at the door, and of course somebody knocks at the door, they open it up, and it's Jean Grey. Here's the kicker. Jean Grey just gave birth and she's right there, so there's 2 Jeans. I didn't think they were going to go that route, because if you read these convoluted comics, Cyclops' son is Cable, and when Jean gives birth in the show, she names the baby Nathan, so the baby is Cable. Jean shows up at the mansion, which means that the Jean who gave birth is more likely than not Madeline Pryor. They could switch it up and say that the Jean who shows up is Madeline Pryor. That way Cyclops didn't just bang a clone, because that would have been weird. But again, we're only 2 episodes in. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Okay, I have a few more thoughts before I wrap this up. I really liked Jubilee in this. She's not in it a whole lot, but Jubilee is a character that I found somewhat annoying in the original show, but I never found her as annoying as a lot of other people did, because she's really endearing in other episodes, and I like her dynamic with Logan. And in this, I think it might be the new voice actor that they got for her. Her name is Holly Chow, I think. She is so good, and she has the right amount of like bubbly personality for Jubilee. I'm just happy to see that character again. I didn't think I was gonna be so happy to see Jubilee and Morph, but here we are. Oh, Morph. Okay, there's a wonderful little scene with Morph, and this is what made me like Morph in this show more than I ever liked Morph in the original series. Wolverine is brooding in a tree outside, I believe after Storm leaves. He's brooded a lot in the original show, and he's always been a loner, but they established in the original show that him and Morph were best friends. In fact, Wolverine says that Morph was
the only one who could ever make me laugh.
So Wolverine's doing his brooding, and Morph comes out and shows that they want to have a drink with him. And Wolverine's like, no, leave me alone. It's all silent. Like, he doesn't actually say that, but you know what I mean. But then Morph doesn't take no for an answer and playfully starts throwing stuff at him. And Wolverine comes down and laughs. Again, established in the original show, they make him laugh. I don't know why that scene was so touching to me. I really loved it. It was cool. It was a cool little moment. What's not cool is they're implying that Rogue and Magneto had an intimate relationship. I don't know how I feel about that, because it's heavily implied that they're keeping Magneto's origin from the original show and the comics. The original show, again, it's also implied that Magneto is a survivor from the Holocaust, which means in the original show, in this continuation, he is an old man, and Rogue is at the very most in her early 20s, and now he has a power dynamic over her. He didn't have a power dynamic over her when it's implied that they had an intimate relationship, but still it feels weird, it feels icky, and it feels like there's like a gap, too much of an age gap there. I don't like it. I especially don't like it because I have always been a shipper of Rogue and Gambit, and this show even shows that you should ship Rogue and Gambit, because when they're at the nightclub, when they're chasing after Sunspot, I think that's supposed to be Sunspot, they have a relationship, or they're trying to make a relationship, but she has that relationship with Magneto, and they show Gambit kind of knowing about it, and you don't make my boy Gambit cry. God damn it. I don't know. It felt weird to me. The other weird thing is they keep calling Magneto Eric. I don't remember. They could call him Eric in the original show, but almost every single time that I hear him mentioned by name, they refer to him as Magnus, which is funny because he's the master of magnetism. He's Magneto, and his name is Magnus. If you don't know, his name in the comic book is Max Eisenhart, but after he escapes Nazi Germany, he changes his name to Eric Linshear or Magnus in some iterations, or sometimes it's interchangeable. Sometimes Magnus is his middle name, but in this, they're calling him Eric like they've always called him Eric, and that felt weird. Not as weird as the Rogue Magneto thing, and I really hope that they just do away with that, or I don't know. It feels icky to me. I don't like it. But other than that and a few minor nitpicks, I'm really digging this show. Something that was scaring me a little bit was that the episodes were 33 minutes long, and a lot of streaming services do this, and they do it not knowing that they don't have enough story to tell. Looking at Arrested Development on Netflix, just because you can do something over 22 minutes doesn't necessarily mean that you should. But on Disney Plus, at least 5 minutes of that is dedicated to credits, so the episodes are more likely than not like 27, 28 minutes long. At least for me, there's not a single wasted minute. Like, they make really good use of that time. It's got enough action to satisfy even the most brain dead of fans. It's got enough nuance to satisfy people like me, the intellectuals. But more importantly, at least so far, it gets the core of what the X-Men is all about 100% right. It's about the characters, and it's about the allegories, and again, so far, I think that they're doing a really good job. What do you guys think of X-Men 97? Do you think it's a worthy follow-up to the 90s show? Do you think it's a little bit too woke? Leave a comment below and let's start a discussion about it. But please, let's keep it civil, okay? But before I go, I saved a Google review from about 4 hours ago, and I wanted to share it with you all because it is one of the most brain-dead takes I've seen about this series so far, so let me read it for you. The fact that they're introducing a homosexual element to the show is enough for me not to watch. If this was honestly done in the spirit of 97, the presence of anything close to this wouldn't be the case. Okay, I'm gonna stop you right there. Gay people didn't just suddenly exist after the 90s. They're not a new phenomenon. They've been around forever. Trans people have been around forever. We're only now starting to talk about it because it's becoming a little bit more safe for them to talk about it. But even then, there's a lot of people, probably like this idiot, who are hell-bent on making their lives hell. Maybe that's why they're not speaking up so much. Maybe that's why it seems like they're popping up out of nowhere, is because of people like you who are bigoted. Let's continue. To make it seem like Wolverine is in some quasi-flirtatious relationship with another character is disgusting. I know that you're trying to say that he's in a quasi-relationship with Morph, which, if he is, hey, more power to them, right? Do I need to remind you that in the original show that he was fawning over Jean every 2 seconds? There's an internet meme of him laying on the bed with Jean's photograph. These are cartoons. These are supposed to be for kids. Let the parents, not a TV, introduce these conversations with their children. Last time I checked, the show is rated TV PG, but I get it. This is definitely in the vein for children, but I think it's important for children to know about relationships. I think it's important for children to know that not everybody's going to be straight. What if your kid ended up being gay? Would that really be the worst thing ever? So my children and I will be skipping this, and I was really looking forward to it. Disney does it again, killing a good show trying to be progressive. The X-Men were always progressive. Are you sick in the head? Are you too stupid to see what this is actually about? Also, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but telling your kids you can't watch it, it's just gonna make your kids want to watch it more, so good luck having that conversation. Anyway, I hope the trajectory of the show is good, and if you guys like videos like this, I'll make another after I watch the next episode, so hopefully I'll see you then. I've got a Pee-wee video eventually coming out. I've got a video about Pride of the X-Men that is coming out pretty soon. And of course, I've got sketches coming out probably every week, so I hope you guys don't get sick of me. I'll see you guys in a few days with a new video. Later. Special thanks to Mrs. Froggy, Big Drippy, Rukix, Robith, Straight Queer, Catherine Escobar, and Charizard for supporting me on Patreon. And thank you for making it to the end of the video.